Hi everyone, welcome to historic Nunley's Carousel. I'm going to give you a little field trip, a virtual field trip, all about the carousel. We're going to start with the history of the carousel, then I'll give you a tour of the carousel. We can even go inside the center and see what it looks like on top of the carousel. And then, at the very end, we'll turn on the band organ and we'll go for a ride. Well, Nunley's Carousel was carved in 1912. It makes it well over 100 years old. It was carved by Stein and Goldstein right here in New York. Let's see if we can find a picture of him. Here we go. Okay, from 1912 to 1939, Nunley's Carousel was at Golden City Park in Canarsie, Brooklyn. In 1939, the Belt Parkway was built. The carousel needed to be moved since the park was going to be closed. The parkway was going right through the park. So Nunley, this guy who owned the carousel, packed up his carousel, packed up another building, a big white building that had a different carousel in it. That carousel that was in the building, that went to the World's Fair that was being held in New York. They took their carousel building, started heading down Sunrise Highway, found a great location in Baldwin, and started Nunley's Amusements. Three brothers eventually ran the carousel, the LeCarry brothers, and when they retired in 1995, they closed their business. The carousel became the property of Nassau County and was stored in that building right behind those trees. It stayed there for about 10 years while we figured out what to do with it. Finally, the carousel was packed up, shipped out to Mansfield, Ohio, and restored. Came back here in 2009, right here on Museum Row, between the Children's Museum, the Firefighting Museum, and the Cradle of Aviation. I pulled out two artifacts. This one is called a Murphy base. It is very heavy. I needed a little hand truck to get it over here. This was the original basis for the jumping horses. The horses were on the poles, and then the pole would go through this base right through the bottom of the floor. The floor had to be a lot higher than it is now so that the pole wouldn't scrape the floor. Now, we use a little different system. It's more of a hydraulic system. So the floor can be really low. There you go. And the pole doesn't go through the floor. They go one on top of the other. The other thing I pulled out, which is kind of neat, here's this this was a wooden form that was used to make a gear, the main gear for a carousel. The main gear for the carousel is up on top. It's made out of cast iron. This form wasn't used for our gear as it doesn't match up, but it was kind of neat to see. Now, what we can do, we'll take a little tour of Nunley's Carousel. I'm going to jog the carousel to bring the lead horse right in front. So when we jog the carousel, we'll move it very slowly. Here it comes. Here goes the lion and some other horses. We have 41 horses on the carousel and one lion. There's been a lot of guesses as to why there's one lion on the carousel. Interestingly, the lion was carved by Denzel, not Stein and Goldstein. And Nunley tended to have one lion on all of his carousels. He owns at least a dozen of them. Some guesses are always for good luck. If you have a guess, come tell us. That'd be great. The lion's also older than the carousel, being carved in the late 1800s. You see the lead horse coming around now. The lead horse on a carousel is the fanciest horse on the carousel. It's often the largest, and it's often right in front of the chariot. Here is our lead horse. Her name is Penny. But Penny wasn't always the lead horse on our carousel. Rumor has it that there was a big, fancy armored horse that was sold to one of the customers. And now Penny's our lead horse, and inside Penny is a time capsule. Carousel horse is not made out of a solid block of wood. Instead, it's hollow. So inside this Penny is a time capsule. Other thing interesting to notice is the outside of the horses are fancy and carved with all these decorations. The insides are plain. Why do you think that's the case? It's because when you're watching the carousel, you only see the outside. Now the funny thing is American carousels run counterclockwise, opposite our clock. European carousels run clockwise, the other way. So if you want to know a European horse, it's carved on the other side, fancier than American horses. So on American horse, the right side is fancy. On European horses, the left side is fancy. So as we walk around, this is a chariot, this is the red chariot. You can see how fancy the carvings are. This one's kind of unique as it starts as a dragon, kind of turns into a scaly animal of sorts. It has a Native American on the back with cabbage roses, kind of a real mix of carvings. As we go around, you can see how beautiful the carvings are on the horses. Now, this is a Stein and Goldstein horse. Stein and Goldstein horses had really large buckles, and the teeth were baring. They really looked like they were in motion. The next horse is carved by Denzel, the same as the lion, and you can see it has a much sweeter face. It doesn't look like it's straining at its bit. This Stein and Goldstein, he's a little silly. There's his tongue hanging out. All the horses, because they were carved by hand, they're all different, and they all have their own personality. Now, before I said there was only one lion on the carousel. That's sort of true. There's one large lion, but there are a number of hidden lions all over the carousel. On the carousel animals, there's other animals. Here's an owl on the back of this lion. Over here, see the bird on the back of that horse? While we're over here, let's take a look at the tails. Most of the horses have real horsehair. So the horsehair has to be washed, conditioned, brushed regularly. Some horses, and the lion, have carved tails. They were by a different manufacturer, like the Denzel lion, but the Stein and Goldstein horses all had real horsehair tails. Here's another bird. Let's see if we can find those hidden lions. Walk around, we'll see what we can find. On the other side of the chariot over here is the blue chariot on the other side of the carousel. It's carved the same as the red chariot, but everyone remembered the blue chariot as being green. But when the horses and the carousel was restored, they discovered that it was originally blue, so we painted it back blue. Here's another Denzel. Aren't they beautiful with the carved flowers on this one? Like I said, each one has its own special carvings. Here's a water bottle. Almost made it all the way around. This is a beautiful eagle. Now this horse is kind of neat. There's an eagle in the back. It has a person in the front. And who is that person? Guesses were from Don Quixote to all sorts of people. Again, if you have a guess, let us know. This is an armored horse. See the armor on its face? And this horse is also special because it's the only one we have. There you go, a lion carved right into his saddle. Okay, we'll take one more walk around. Now here's a math question for you. The carousel is 42 feet across. The diameter is 42 feet. So, what's the circumference? Give you a little time to figure that out. We'll get back to that. So, the circumference of this is about 132 feet, which means I have to walk all the way around about 40 times to walk a mile. And the funny thing is when I check the carousel, when I'm checking seatbelts, I always walk in the same direction. I always walk clockwise, because that way I could see the children, the people's faces, and to see if their belts are on. So I only wear out my left shoe. Just a fun fact. All right, let's take a look inside. That is kind of neat. Now, how does the carousel work? If you look under the carousel, we're going to go down on the floor and look under the carousel. I don't know if you can see, but there's nothing under the carousel. The carousel is suspended from the top. So if you think of holding a giant umbrella, the center pole of the carousel is the umbrella pole, and the entire carousel hangs off the very, very top. Kind of neat. Nothing underneath. Now, I'm going to open one of these inside panels. This is cool. Now, remember that gear I talked about before? If you look all the way up, there's the main gear of the carousel. Here's the center pole. Starts down here, goes up, up, up through the top of the carousel, and all the way up. Maybe we'll climb up there and take a look. Now this is how the carousel works. We have one fairly small motor at the top of the pole. Is a small gear. We'll take a look at that from the top in a moment. The inside gear turns, and that turns the large gear around here. And that's it. 2 gears turning turns the carousel. Then, the jumper horses have what looks like a bent pole. So as the carousel turns, there's a little gear on the very inside, and that turns the pole. And the pole, which looks bent, actually makes the horses go up and down. So let's see if we could climb up top. That's kind of cool. I'll try to do this without dropping my phone. So, climb up to the top of the carousel. And we get a better look at the main gear. There's that small gear. There's the main gear. It is pretty filthy up here, because this carousel is greased often. Now we're actually going to go up on top of the carousel. Let's take a look at that center pole. Pretty neat. What's that? Well, the carousel's turning around. There has to be a way to get power. You don't want an electrical cord wrapped around the center pole. So it actually slips around and around and around, like a little racetrack. Here are those small gears that turn and make the horses go up and down. And here are the poles that go all the way out. And what we're facing is the rounding boards. And below us now is that main gear. Pretty cool, pretty dirty. All right, let's climb down. What do you say we go for a ride? Go right down to the bottom. Now, when we turn on the carousel, you definitely want to turn on the band organ. Here's the back of the band organ. The band organ runs on pneumatics, which means as air blows through paper rolls, goes through the holes, that tells what instruments to play. Okay, now this carousel has this 153 whirl. It's a band organ. That's pneumatic, but it's also set up with a MIDI system. The MIDI system is a computer system that tells which instruments to play. So we have drums, we have cymbals, we've got the glockenspiel, and inside are many, many, many pipes. So, what we do, we have a little system here. Close the gates, lock the gates. We ring the bell one time. Then we have to walk completely around the carousel. So, to check for seatbelts, check for anything. While we're walking around, this is the ring machine. The very, very end, you can see a silver ring coming out. There's 27 silver rings and 1 brass ring. That's where the phrase came, catch the brass ring. If you get the brass ring, you get a free ride. So if you're sitting on an outside horse, you try to grab the rings. Here's a brass ring. Now that brass ring was given to me when we took over the carousel. It's the keeper of the carousel brass ring, so I keep it on my keychain. Very special to me. And here's the bucket that we collect the rings. Those are the silver ones. All right, let's go back around the carousel and check everything. The carousel runs for 4.5 minutes a ride. Takes about another 4.5 minutes to load and unload the carousel. So that means we can run a ride every 9 minutes. So if I have to walk 40 times around the carousel, walk 2 times per ride. You know how many rides it'll take for me to walk a mile. Okay, we did our check. Now, ring the bell 2 times. Let's turn on the band organ. You hear it click on. That's the pneumatics, that's that sound. Here comes the music.